Okay, so now we're on step 20. Step 20 is the steering rods. We need MR9, which is the longer of the rods, which is 75 millimeters, MR10, which is 53 millimeters, and we need MR5, and we need two of these, and they're the 4 millimeter tie rod ends. We need to now put these together, and we need to make sure that they actually measure the 69 millimeters for the longer of the steering rods and 46.5 millimeters for the shorter of the steering rods. And this is between the end of the ball joint end and the curve section where this goes into the servo saver. So we need to get this exactly right. You can use the drawing as a reference, which we'll do, and then I'll check it with my my digital vernier. Okay, so that's what we need. We have the parts now for step 20. We'll do the build. And the building of these is as simple as popping in to the ball end the rod and twisting the rod so it grabs some threads. A little bit of push pressure at the same time, and you'll feel it bite, and then once it starts to bite, we can start to, there we are, then we can start to wind that in, and we literally are winding that in to the point where we get it roughly on the drawing. And we need to make sure that it matches as well, where the ball end faces down and the curved section of the steering rod faces up. So we need to wind this until we get it right. I'm just going to offer it up to the drawing and see, probably a little bit shorter. So yeah, we're somewhere near on that one, and I'm going to measure that in a moment. So let's just pop the other one, which is the longer of the steering rods. And again, trying to keep that straight as you push and twist at the same time. There we go. And now we've got that going through. There we are. There we are. And now we're pushing that and twisting that through now. And again, we've got the ball end facing down and the curved end of the steering rod facing up. So just offering it up to the drawing, probably a bit short again. So we're going to do this by measurement. So doing the shorter of the two, and I'm just trying to, so we need to make sure the ball end is facing down and that this is at 90 degrees to the ball end. So we're as close as we can be to the measurement of 46.5 millimeters. I'm just measuring that now. I'm 46.7, and that's as near as I'm going to be, because if I wind this another turn round, that will be shorter. So we'll go with that and on that one. And let's have a look at the longer of the two and see where we are. And we need to be 69 millimeters. So again, I'm at 69.2. And again, that's as near as I'm going to be, because by the time I wind this round, I'll never get the exact measurement, because I need to be at 90 degrees to this at this end. So that's really as close as I can be. So there we are. So that is step 20 done. So we're on step 21 now, and step 21 looks a busy step, but this is all about putting the steering rods onto our servo and controlling our steering system. For this, we need to make sure that our servo is central. So we're going to need our battery pack to give us some power, and we'll do that here like this. And I'm going to neutralize the servo first of all on this step. So let's turn on our controller, and then let's turn on the car, and we've got our steering servo, and we need to make sure that the trim and everything, so we've got to put our dual rate right up. There we are. We have our steering servo. Just moving the trim up and down. Okay, there we are. I think I'm happy with that. So we'll turn the car off, we'll turn the controller off. So now we have our steering servo, and we'll unplug our battery pack. So now we have our steering servo neutralized. We can now obtain the components that we need for step 21 and put the steering servo and the steering rods together. That's what we're going to do next. So we have the 3mm by 10mm BB6 screws from bag B. We needed 3 of those. We've got our BC2, a 2.6mm by 10mm pan head screw from bag C. We also have our 3mm by 10mm self-tapping pan head screw from bag E, our MR 7 bar, which is a 6 by 48mm shaft. We also have from the servo saver horn tree, we have the S1, the S3, the S6, and in my case I have the S4. This fits my my servo. And then of course we've got our steering rods that we made in step 20. We now have all the components we need to assemble step 21. Okay, so I'm feeling for the servo horn to go on. I'm just feeling as I put this on for the splines, and the splines are, you just either, we're trying, the object here is to try and get this as vertical as possible, this key here for the servo saver. In reality, you don't quite get it exactly where you want it. You're either one side of it or you're not. So we'll just pop it into the position that I can get nearest as I possibly can to that vertical position. That'd be there. There we go. And then we can always trim this out either with the settings in the radio gear or with our rods to make the desired steering angle that we need. So we put on S4 in this case, because I'd like to put those in first. So they twiddle round like so, in from the bottom and around onto the servo horn, and then back with our screw and screw that into place. And now these are literally pop onto the steering rods. You just literally pop and on. There you are. So now our steering system is in place, and we're going to need to adjust this to make it look straight, or to bring in the required toe in, toe out a later step. But let's carry on with step 21. And step 21, we've got to put the bar in place that supports the chassis, and I'm going to pop that underneath the wiring that I've got there for the time being. I'll decide on the routing of the wiring once I'm happy. We then take our 3mm by 10mm machine screws, because this is a machine thread in this bar, and we are literally popping them through into the hole there, and we're going to need to screw that through from the right there. There we are. That's one side, and again our 3mm screw. There we are, 3x10 into the other side. And good job I can use a screwdriver left and right. Ambidextrous. So it's a case of screwing that tight, which we're doing here. There we are. That's that tight. And we are. So now we have our support bar in there as well. So we are now effectively step 21 complete. Okay, so we are on step 22 and getting now very excited. So step 22, we're doing front wheels and tyres. I'm going to put my hands up here a little bit and just to say to you that yes, I have been out into the spray box. Well, I say spray box, it's my cardboard box that I adapt to allow me to spray components. And yes, I have sprayed the wheels. This part I haven't sprayed because this part goes inside the tyre, but the outer of the three pieces I have sprayed them silver. I'm a little bit pedantic like that. I see alloy wheels as being alloy looking. Most of them are alloys, so they look like they're silver, and of course modern day alloys do have a little bit of black and things inside them as well, but mine are just standard alloy wheels. It's had about 3 coats. I've done the back, I've done the fronts and the rears, so it's had about 3 coats. So anyway, for step 22, we need some screws now. We need from bag A, we need 8 of BA5s, which are 2mm by 8mm, and we need from bag C, we need the nut that screws onto these, and they are 8 of those as well, so they're the 2mm nut. So yeah, we've got to do this. And a friend on my YouTube, a fellow guru as I call them, they say whenever you get the wheels and tyres, so here's the bag of tyres you get, you gotta get them out and oh yeah, give them a good sniff, you know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, smell that, yeah. You like that, yeah? Anyway, there guys, there's the obligatory sniff the tyres done for you. Now I've joined the club well and truly, my initiation is complete. Anyway, we'll get down to step 22 and complete step 22. That's putting the front wheels and tyres together. So reading through the manual, we've now got our tyre, and we got our inner wheel section that we're going to fit to our tyre. And the manual actually says insert the wheel 3 as shown and then twist. So what it's getting you to do is to move the wheel, the central section of the wheel, into the tyre, and then once you're in the central part of the tyre, then you twist it so it goes in. And the idea is, there we go, look, there. So that's how you do that section. So you push it in at 90 degrees in, and then you twist it once you're in. And that's what it's getting you to do. And you can see now why I said to you about, didn't worry about painting this, because it's fully in the tyre. And then when you put these outer ones on, you're not going to see these. So that's one of those. And little important thing to note here is if you look at the wheels, so if you look at if I take the central piece of one I haven't done yet, you'll see there's a little key notch here, and that key notch lines up with the little notch in the 3-piece wheels. You've got a little notch on each side, so you have to make sure that that key is notched in I'm going to try and focus it up. There's a key there, and then on the other side there's a key there. It's like a little piece, like a little notch in the moulding there. So you have to line those up so that when you pop these on, this line that lines up to the notch, so that it can sit and squash the tyre, and effectively it squashes the tyre and the central pieces together when you screw them together. So make sure you get those lined up, and then you should be able to screw the screws in. So there's the first screw in, and you can just see, so making sure you line those keys up together, that'll allow you to make sure you can line the screws up as well. So it's a case of repeating this now for all of the screws. I'll do the one wheel for you, so you can see I'm literally going opposite the first one. So pop your nut into the captive area behind, then pop yourself on the front, put your finger over there to stop the nut from spinning out, and then there you go. That should screw through. I can feel that. So again, so now I'm going to go on this side. Put my finger on the nut there and across. There we go. And again on this side. It's the last one on this wheel. So here we go. Excuse my little fat fingers. There we are. One of the screws. There we go. And now that they are all in, we can torque them up so they're nice and tight. So I'm going to do them in opposites, so I can bring the wheel and tyre down nicely together, nice and torqued down. And I'm going to keep torquing this down until it doesn't torque down anymore. Okay. That's it. There we are. Wheel and tyre in. And this bit will carry the bearing and for the front. So these will be the front wheels. There we are. And the bearing will go inside there. So I'll do the other tyre and the other wheel. So there, that will technically be 22 done. Back in a second. Okay, so there we are. They're the two front tyres and the wheels are together. So that's step 22 complete. Step 23 is the rear wheels and tyres, and much the same fashion as in step 22 with the fronts. You've got the BA5s, 8 of those, which are 2x8mm screws, and the BC5s, which are the 8 of the 2mm nuts. And again, much the same, you have your tyres and your wheels, and yeah, you'll notice again the silver, which is what I sprayed them. Sorry, quick sniff of that one just to make sure the front and rear smell the same. There guys, yeah, lovely. And yeah, we just put these together in much the same fashion as we did before, so making sure that the notches in the 3 pieces all fit the notches in the center pieces. So when you put them together, you're going to squash the wheels together and they're going to notch in and collect each other so that you're able to get the nuts and screws through. And yeah, it's a simple process. Put them in again, it's much the same. Pop this in through the center, much the same way as before. Give it a good push through the tyre, and then once you're sort of halfway through, you stretch the tyre over, and then stretch the tyre over. There you are. There you go. Another sniff again. There you are. Yeah, that's the inner tyre bits done, and it's a case of putting these together and screwing them together as before, as I did on step 22. So yeah, 22 and 23 virtually the same, and back in a second I'll just do that. And now I have my 2 rear wheels, and all I'm going to do now they're in place, is do them up nice and tight, opposite each other, nice and tight as it squashes down. You feel, and I'm just being careful that I don't slip because I don't want to scratch the nice silver paint that I've just done. So just going over that, make sure that's tight, which it is. There we go. And the same again on the other wheel. There we go. Nice and tight. Nice and tight. Nice and tight. There we are. So that is 22 and 23 tyres. Rear ones, front ones. They're now ready to go onto the car. Onto the next step, 24. So step 24 is attaching the front wheels, and you'll notice that I've replaced those horrid plastic spacers, the plastic bearings as Tamiya call them. We don't want those, yuck. I've replaced all the bearings, all those plastic bearings, with proper bearings when I purchase the kit. It's one of the things we RC modelers do. It's much easier just to buy the bearing set and pop them in as you're building the car, rather than having to take the whole car apart. So yeah, now it's a case of bringing the car into play. As you can see, the angle, so that you can see everything's going on. Front axle here. We have our front wheel, and the wheel has spaces on either side for a bearing, so we need to pop a bearing in there. So one in one side, one in the other. Bearing, the wheel now goes onto the axle, and I'll just tip that up so you can see. And there we are. And then one of our 4mm nut, which has a nylon locking system on there, so that's a nylon nut that literally screws on. You could use the included box spanner that comes with the kit if you wish. It will quite happily do up with the box spanner, as you can see. There we are. That's now tight. And we can do the other side. So again, your bearing in one side, your bearing in the other, onto the axle, and your nut, and again use your box spanner to do up the nut. Okay, so step 25 we're on now. So we now need our two rear wheels. We also need a couple of shafts, BA7s. We need two of those. We also need a couple of the 4mm lock nuts for the wheels. We also need C11, two of those, one each side of the rear wheels. It talks about popping a 3mm by 10mm self-tapping screw BA4 from into and the aerial antennae onto the car here. I'm not going to do that step, as I've got a modern 2.4 GHz system which I've installed into my car. So I'm not going to do that because my system is already here. And it talks about connecting up the wires for the motor. We now have our components to do step 25, and we'll put the rear wheels onto the car. Okay, so as this near side rear is is visible on the camera, I'm going to remove the body pin that was holding the bearing in place. Again with my fingers this time. There we go, pop up the shaft there. There we are. So we're popping that through. So we now have that through the shaft. We then take our C11 part, and if you notice there's some slots in C11. We're going to pop that through over the shaft and just, there we are, so that locates. Now that it locates, you'll see that the inside here will now locate into the onto the actual shaft and onto C11 part. So we'll just need to make sure that stays in there like that, and then pop it in there. There we are. So that locks in, and then we take our 4mm locking nut and we screw that onto the top there, and I'm going to this time use my Tamiya nut driver, which I have. It's good. We are, so that's nice and tight, and the other side is much the same. So remove the body pin, we'll put those into safekeeping with the rest of the body pins. Take our shaft and a little bit here, little tip here for getting these little things up off here. Just put the tongue on the edge of there on your finger, press it down, and then you can lift it up. So I'm going to pop that on there, and then pop that on there like so. Take our C11 part, slide that down so it locates over. Take our wheel, so it locates over. Take our locking nut and tuck our nut spinner, and then don't know if that caught that on shot there. So just I'm holding the wheel and tyre while I do up, so it's nice and tight. There we are. So we now technically have a rolling chassis. Nice. We are now on step 28, and 28 is a relatively straightforward step. It talks about adjusting the left and right steering rods to point the wheels at a slight inward, so slight toe in is the word that they use. I've kind of the right hand one, or what I would call the offside steering rod, that was okay. I've got a slight toe in on the offside front. On the near side front, I had to undo the attachment here. I had to turn it anti-clockwise, one turn, just to bring this to give me a slight toe in on one side, and that kind of matches up with the servo. If you go back to the step where the servo, we had to put the servo on the spline, and it was a slightly different servo spline. We weren't quite vertical, so that kind of makes up for that. So I now have the slight toe in as the initial setup, as per step 28, and that is now step 28 complete, and that in fact is the rolling chassis complete for the Subaru Brat. I've tidied up some of the cabling so that it's all nice and neat and tidy there. The motor wires go underneath these bars and go across. I've got my battery connector inside. I switch, and then the receiver is up on the top here. So effectively everything is in place, and yeah, we're ready to rock and roll, as they say. Nice build, easy to put together. Suspension, we've got to do a little bit of setup when we start doing the first run. But the next step really involves painting and bodywork. So lots more to do, and enjoying this very much. Very nice model for the road here. So it's very good. Right, on to the bodywork. Step 28 complete. Thank you.